Brian Grimes, your real estate mentor, back with an important lesson. Today, we're going to be talking about investing in, in land deals. So, this is how you can make massive profits flipping land. So, very important lesson here. Make sure you stay tapped into the end because I'm going to save a lot of the most important information for the end, and then we're going to open up for some Q&A. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and leave a comment that says I subscribe. For everyone who leaves that comment, I'm going to send you instant access to my free real estate training that'll show you how to acquire properties for pennies on the dollar all across the country. You don't want to miss out on that free offer. If you have any comments, drop them in the chat. We're going to jump into some of the chat a little bit later. And let's just dive right into this thing. So, the importance of land deals and why I want to talk to you guys about this strategy is because land offers you an opportunity to build a portfolio of properties, to build a real estate business at a very low entry cost. There's very little competition in this space. Not a lot of people understand it and the profitability. I learned about this initially from an investor who all he did, and he had big money, big backing. All he did was buy land. He would just sit at the auction, buy land all day. And I didn't understand it. I mean, he would come to the auction, every auction, 3 times, 4 times a month, and he's dropping 400, 500,000 at the auction, just parking capital. And I talked to him one day and just said, why are you doing this? Why aren't you, flipping houses or doing something else? And his response was, this is the most profitable thing out there. This is the most profitable thing that I could do. And he sat me down and showed me the profit margins pound for pound. We're going to talk about that near the end, what the ROI was on this strategy. And I was completely blown away. It wasn't a strategy that I decided to model around because, I have different things. You guys know me. I'm all about the BRRRR strategy, buying and holding and building portfolios and rehabbing communities. But this strategy is powerful, especially if you're just getting started. You want to make sure that you're tapped in to a strategy like this. If you're starting off with a few $100s or a few $1,000s and you want to get into real estate and start to create generational wealth. So I want to bring you guys this strategy because I just think it's so powerful and not enough people talk about it. So let's break down the mechanics of the land business. And basically, this is a business model where you will acquire land in target areas in major cities. Major areas could be areas of a state that are about to develop, but you're going to acquire land and flip this land to other developers, other people who want to do ground up deals. And there's nothing wrong with doing your own ground up deal. I will leave that as a caveat. You can do your own ground up deals. It can be profitable in certain markets, but you don't have to get very wealthy in real estate. So I'm going to show you potentially an easier way or less cost intensive way. And most land deals, we should know, will take a very long time for us to execute on. A land deal could take you upwards of, on average, 12 to 18 months, soup to nuts, meaning from when you acquire the land lot to when you get it properly zoned, properly parceled, you get all the soil tests done, you get everything good to break ground, and then you start with that project, and then you go through all the checkpoints, and then you finish that project. It could take you a while. So this can be a slower buildup, but a much faster exit strategy and way lower in terms of capital intensiveness. So let's dive right into it. So the first question that we get, and make sure you guys drop questions in the chat so that we can touch on all your questions if we miss anything. But this is the first question that I get, which is, where can I buy it? So where do I go to buy land? How do I look for it? What are some of the factors that I need to think about there? And I want to take us kind of into a process of looking at land. So let's say I'm just targeting somewhere like Philadelphia. So I just want to see, show me all the land in Philly. The first thing I'm going to do is go into a platform like a Redfin, and I'm going to do some sorts here. So I'm going to go into home type. I'm going to go to land. So I'm going to just sort out and screen out all of the land. I'm going to go from recommended to maybe price low to high, price high to low. And I'm going to find some of the lower costing land lots. And or I can do like newest to market. I can see some of the newest stuff that's hitting the market, and just see what's going on in terms of pricing. What are things selling for? what's the lowest costing land out here? How can I get started for, as little money out of pocket as possible? So I'm going to start by doing my research here and just seeing what's on the market. And you can do that pretty easily. You can also zoom into certain pockets if there are specific zip codes or areas of the city that you want to tap into. You can do that. And you're going to primarily look at areas where there are good locations. I mean, everything in real estate, especially with this strategy, is, location, location, location. I want to buy land in the right area because that's going to be the biggest determiner of the value, long term and short term, for this property. So your profit is heavily tied to location, but we'll get there. So you can do your screens here. You can find land right on the MLS. You can go on. You can negotiate with sellers through listing agents and put land deals under contract for very little. I mean, this guy's asking like 7K. This property's been on the market for 245 days. They're going to take less, right? You're not going to get into like a bidding war here. They're going to take substantially less for this land, and you'll kind of be good to go if that was the lot you want. So you have the Redfin option. Next, I'm going to go to platforms like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. And these are very similar. If you've watched my How to Get Cheap Deals video, this is very similar in terms of some of the sources that I'll go to. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to go to real estate for sale. I hate this view. And this is just because of how long ago I started, with Craigslist. I always like to go to this list view. It just flows a little bit better for me. We can put in different price parameters, but I'm just going to type in things like lots for sale. And I'll start to see, lots for sale in different areas of the city. I might put in something like land lot, vacant land for sale. We'll start to see just land for sale, Price Township. Sometimes people put these things in here that aren't even affiliated. Strawberry Mansion lot for sale, 20K. And you can take these properties, if they list the address, which sometimes they don't, you can go do research on them, and we'll talk about some of the research we look for. But you can basically just build a list, start reaching out to people and putting deals under contract for very little, if they make sense. So you have these resources. This stuff is typically off market. So while it is on Craigslist, which is a marketplace in itself, it's not the MLS. So there's definitely less competition here in terms of it being a marketplace. So we do have that. We also have some of these auctions. You'll have different, Hub Zoos and auction.com. You'll have some of those types of auctions, but a lot of the municipal auctions have shifted to online auctions and different websites because of COVID. So the Philadelphia auction in particular used to be 100% in person pre-COVID. It was 100% in person. The only way to go was to show up on the day of the auction, go to the location, which was in a part of South Philly, I believe. And it might have been West Philly, and sit there and bid on properties all day. Like you'd be there for maybe 4 or 5 hours. You're bidding on properties. That was a really good environment because you could see who you were bidding next to. Like I said, I could go up to a guy who just dropped $500,000 on land and talk to him during the break, and just say, look, why are you doing this? Talk to me about your business, and pick people's brains. And you can learn so much in that process, physically being there and seeing, people responding to bids, and, people doing the walk of shame when they overbid and then they don't have the money and they kind of get kicked out of the auction. So you get to learn a lot and see a lot. Now they're all online, which opens it up to you if you're out of state. So you might be in a state that is priced out right now, but you want to invest in land or in properties out of town. You can now do this through these different auction sites. So this site, bidforassets.com, Philly shifted over to, I want to say in 2021, because the auction was shut down for the entire 2020 period until mid to late 2021. So they have the Philadelphia Sheriff Sale listed as one of their hot links. This is not because, of me. I'm not even logged in here. So you can click on the Philly Sheriff Sale. They'll have a lot of information about, the process and how to do auctions. But, you can kind of click here for the foreclosure auctions. And most of these deals, as you research them, I mean, you can kind of click through and pick different dates, but most of the deals that are listed are going to be land lots. They're either going to be land lots or shells. And I found that almost, I want to say 70% of the properties that I've seen on some of these like tax sale lists and tax sale auctions, maybe 60, somewhere between 60 to 70% are land lots. The rest are shells, properties that can be lived in. And out of those shells, maybe there are some good properties that people are actually living in, but those are in specific zip codes. And those properties usually get redeemed, or people will come up with the back taxes. They usually do not get auctioned off when the property's in a great zip code and it's worth a couple $100,000. So we will have that as well. So that's just one thing to kind of keep an eye on. Once again, if you guys have questions about anything, drop them in the chat. We're going to be diving into questions near the end. So, drop a comment and we'll get to your questions. I may even pause and address a question if it's related to what we're talking about at the moment. So we do have this as well. And these you can go on. They're like open bid. This bid is going to start on January 13th. And you'll be able to, just go on, create an account and bid on these deals. These auctions are going on several times per month. There's a lot of them. This was the foreclosure. We also had the mortgage auction, which has clearly a bunch more properties, right? So this one has maybe 15, 20 properties to a page. They have kind of the current bids. This one's on January 10th. And let's see if they have another one. Yeah, they got a bunch of them, January 10th, February, March, April. So you can also tee up and prep for these different auctions, right? You can get ahead of the game. So we have a lot of this stuff. So that's where you want to go to find your deals. You want to just go onto these websites, whether it's the auction, Craigslist, the MLS, and you want to target your deals. So this is where you're going to go to for your supply. You can also go through wholesalers. Wholesalers will get deals. You can also call people, skip trace land lots, do your research and call the owners. A lot of these owners of land lots, they might take a couple $100s to just off a land lot. Like you might not even pay, a few thousand. And of course, this is a major city like Philly. If you're in somewhere like Arkansas, somewhere out in the Midwest, down south, the land lots are going to be a lot cheaper. If you're in Baltimore, the land lots are going to be a lot cheaper. So this is just a location like Philly where we're seeing a little bit of this. So the next question that we get is location. Like, where should I buy a land lot at for it to be valuable? And for a land lot to be valuable, you should buy it on the brink of gentrification. So on the outskirts of gentrified areas. So if you're driving through a neighborhood and you see ground up deals are happening here, people are just hanging off of ladders with banging hammers. Everywhere you look, new deals are being built, new properties are being renovated. You want to try to get yourself maybe a half a mile to a mile outside of that action. If you can get yourself a half a mile to a mile outside of that action and target a lot of that land, that's the land that you can pick up dirt cheap. And you're buying it with a thought process of, I'm going to hold this land for a holding period. And I'll get into holding periods, what like a ideal holding period is a little bit later. But you're going to hold this land and your thought process is, I'm going to keep it until the value catches this pocket. So let's talk about value catching a pocket, because it's important to kind of conceptualize some of the things that I've seen happen over the years. We can do things like this from a value standpoint. If we're trying to determine the value of land, we can go in. I still have my land screen on. I can see all the land deals that have sold in the last 6 months in any of these locations and exactly what they sold for. I can also put price screens to see what land is selling for like the least. But what I really want to do to a degree, this is part of my backwards process, is I want to screen up to see what the more expensive land lots are selling for and where they're selling. So I can zoom out on all of Philly. Now I can see if I screen up, and let me zoom in on this process so you guys can see this a little bit more. If I screen myself upwards, So I'm going from 0 to like 150. If I'm at 0, I have pretty much everything. So there's a lot of market noise in here. If I screen myself up to 150, I'm going to cut out a lot of market noise. So I can see all these areas, land is not selling for a lot. I killed all that market noise, but this is where the action is. This is where the lots are selling for big money. So now that I know those pockets, I can go down and start to add back in and see how the pricing will change as I add back in. What areas will fill the fastest? So I can see South Philly is pretty hot, kind of in this area. These pockets start to fill up a little later, so I'm going to get cheaper land out in West Philly. So this might be my pocket for cheap land. If I can buy closer to these areas, I'm going to be able to pull value. So I can basically just use these screens to see where land is selling, what it's selling for. Very easy. It can't be hidden on the MLS. And I can see exactly what the lot size is and do some of my research, which I'm about to show you guys how to do. So this is a determiner of value. But in terms of location, I've seen over the years areas like this, like Grays Ferry. Grays Ferry is a historically Black section of South Philly. So I watched Grays Ferry, I'll say from 2013, 2014, maybe even before that, maybe let's call it like 2010, from land lots being for going for $10,000, maybe 20,000 to selling for 80 to 100,000, like in a matter of years, because the area just changed. The gentrification hit, the value hit. So that means the people who are at the auctions buying this land for, I mean, at the auction are probably getting it for 2K. They were buying it for 2,000, holding it for a couple of years, and then popping the land deals for $40,000, $50,000. If you run a play like this and you get it right, there's not really going to be a more profitable strategy out there for you. If you're starting with little capital, maybe you have bad credit, but you have a couple of grand and you want to play a slower game that has a big ROI on the back of it, you can play this game. So I just want you guys to know there are pockets that will have this transformation in a matter of 2 to 5 years, we'll call it. And it happens very quickly. And the value of this land, 20X's, 10X, 20X, 5X. And you got to think about how long it would take for you to double your money. The rule of 72, it's going to take you at a rate of return of like 12% or 10%. It's going to take you 7 years to double your money. So with the average stock market returns out there, it's going to take you years and years to double your money. With this, if you do this strategy right, you can quadruple, 10X your money, 20X your money. And we'll talk about other strategies and pound for pound, how they compare to this investment strategy and why I think it's so important to share with you guys. So that's how we will determine location. We'll look at comps. We'll see what land's selling for. We'll drive around neighborhoods, see where activity is. We'll pull comps on ground up deals and see what they purchased the land for and what the after repair value of the ground up deal is. And just make sure that there's some activity there. The more activity, the more the land lots get bought up, the more that your land will be worth. It truly is just a supply and demand game. So let's get into another area of this. What are some things that we have to think about with land lots in terms of carrying costs? There aren't like a ton. I mean, the biggest carrying cost is property taxes, which we can go into something like Redfin. We can pull up a tax history. This land lot, which is in a part of South Philly, this land lot has a property tax of $92 per year. So you could buy this land lot maybe for a couple K, maintain it for a couple years, $90 a year, tax write-off, because property taxes you can write off on your tax return, and then flip that land for serious money at some point. So this is not a cost intensive game. I mean, certainly if you're playing like the big fish I'm telling you guys about, and you're out buying 100 lots every month or a couple hundred lots, a quarter, then that tax bill will add up, annually. It will grow to a pretty large amount. But if you're playing this game conservatively, you're targeting the right areas, Your property tax bill annually will not be that big. It will be a tax write-off for you, and that is your number one source of carrying costs. Now, with that being said, you want to make sure there aren't things like utilities running. So sometimes properties turn into land lots. Like, how does that happen? Sometimes a property will get put on a city's demolition list, and the city will just come by and blow up a house. And I've had this happen. I have a story I just shared recently on a podcast where I was sitting at the closing table. I was about to close on a deal, and I sent my guy, "Hey, go tell me, if the property's still in good condition before we close." I'm literally at the table about to sign and wire money. And the guy sends me back a picture, and it's just a pile of dirt. And he's like, "Yo, the city bulldozed the house this morning." It was like 9:30 at the closing table. They bulldozed the house at 9 o'clock. And when they bulldoze the house, they just dump everything basically into the basement and shovel some dirt over it and keep it moving. And when that happens, you could still, you do still have utility lines underneath that earth that would need to be dug back out if you're going to do a ground up deal on this lot. So when that happens, let's say there was a water line in that property, and that sewer line got damaged during the demolition process, and water's leaking and the meter is still running. You could have an issue where you buy this land lot and there's still a water bill kind of accruing that you're not thinking about because you're like, "Oh, I just own a plot of land. What do I care?" But there's a water tax ID associated with that land lot, and it's just accruing a water bill. So then you go to sell this land, and they're like, "Yo, you owe $10,000 in water bills." You're like, "What? How could I have a water bill? I don't even have a property." Well, that's how. There was just a pipe, it burst, and it's just been leaking out for years and just gushing out water underground that you can't see and that you're not even looking for. So there are things like that that you have to think about and stay ahead of. You can get fines if there's grass on the property, and the grass is not cut. You could get violations, fines, $50, $100. Those will add up over the course of time. So it's something to think about. And you do want to fence in generally your areas because you don't want people, kids or different people kind of hanging out, playing around, getting hurt on your land, trying to sue you. You definitely want to keep this stuff LLC'd as well. So those are just some things to think about. In terms of general evaluation, I can't get into the full depth of screening and evaluation for land lots. I do a lot of that in our 100 Keys Masterclass, our VIP mentorship program. If anybody's interested in that, you just have to click the links and tap into the free training. Scrolling at the bottom, workwithgrimes.com/cash flow. Tap in there. You can schedule a call and learn about the mentorship program. And once again, leave a comment. If anybody's new, leave a comment that says "I subscribed." I'll send you access to another free training that'll show you how to acquire properties for pennies on the dollar. But we'll talk about some of the things that I look for, some of the screens that I will look at for a land lot. So let's dive into some of that for you guys because I think it'll be pretty eye-opening. This is Atlas. They call it like Atlas is your front door to the city of Philly. Every city will have some series of websites that give you information about the zoning and has some type of archive that you can access. Some cities are better than others, and certainly if you're out in a rural area, they may not have developed their website yet, but most major cities will have this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to target a property. I know this block, so I kind of know a lot about what's going on here. Let me just tap in here. So there are a few things. When I come in here, I can do another determinant of value for my land lot, and one of those things that I can do is go to the property search records, and I can see the tax assessed value of the land. The tax assessed value of the land, this is where a tax assessor, so most municipalities, actually all of them have this. A tax assessor is basically somebody who just drives around the neighborhood and generally assesses pockets and areas. They don't do appraisals of an interior of a property, but they basically do like an exterior appraisal. They look at the property generally, how it looks on the outside. They base this calculation on the general area. And then they say land lots in this pocket of the zip code on this street are generally being taxed around this value. Like this is the value of the land. And then we're going to run our calculation, our tax assessment based on this value just for the land. And then there's going to be a market value of the property. And the difference between the two, like you would subtract out the land value and be left with just the building value that sits on the land. So this is a tax assessment. That would be like the taxable improvement is the difference between the two. So this is the tax assessment value of the land. You can use this as a general baseline. This is not to say you should pay this for the land lot. You'll see land lots selling for substantially lower than this in some pockets, or I've seen land lots selling for less or more than this number. So I've seen it both ways where you're like, oh, hey, the tax value from the assessor says it's only worth 66, and they're like, yo, I need 125,000. You do a ground up on this, it's worth $1 million. I don't care what the tax assessor says. So it's not necessarily the end all be all, but it's another assessment of value. More fun stuff is you can see who owned these properties before you. So if you want to see what somebody paid for a land lot in a place like Philly, or for any property really, you can come in here and see what somebody else paid. So that's just some fun stuff. I'm going to look at, of course, the zoning. So when you're evaluating land, I want to see what it's zoned as. What can be built on this parcel? This is probably, I don't want to say it's the biggest determiner of value, but in some ways it is. You can buy land. Another sector of the business is buying land, rezoning it. So going through a zoning board to get approval for, let's say if this area is RM1, so it's residential multifamily, I can build a multifamily property on this plot of land by right. I don't need zoning approval. If this property was RSA 5, residential single family 5, then I would have to get zoning approval to do this same thing. So I would have to get approved to go into this property and kind of reformat it and change it around and make this parcel something that I could build multifamily on if that was the goal. Of course, being able to build multifamily on a parcel makes it worth more money because a developer can grab that, build a apartment building or some type of complex, and it's just more valuable in terms of land. So, part of a strategy could be to target multifamily. You could also target two lots that are next to each other and then combine them. That's called reparceling. So if you can get a bunch of land lots on the same block or in a row, you can reparcel this land and now make it all into one plot of land. And when you do that, you can build a bigger apartment complex on that land. So the value of multiple parcels together increases the value of the individual parcels, right? So you're kind of building a portfolio with that sense. That's another part of the strategy is you can go to the auction and just target individual parcels that are connected to each other or close to each other or across the street from each other, and having a bundle of these parcels that are very close or connected gives you a unique value proposition, especially when you get rezoning done and do some of these other things and then flip that land to a developer. So there's ways to add value outside of just gentrification and supply and demand and people kind of moving closer. So it's something to think about. So we have that. We're also looking at I'll go into the deeds section. The deeds tells me a lot about kind of the positioning of the land, the size of it. So I'm gonna zoom in. Let me zoom you guys in so you can just see a little bit closer here. But it's going to show me things like how wide is the property. This property is 17 and a half feet wide. It's 95 to 100 feet long is what we're seeing here. So it's giving me the general information there. And then ultimately, I could calculate it off of this, but it's giving me a general area that the city has this land down for. So they're telling me the lot size is 1,634 square feet. This is telling me how big of a building could be built on this land once I understand the zoning code, which I once again go into in the master class. But how you need to think about it is you can usually build X amount of units. Let's say I wanted to build a 4-unit building. And hypothetically, let's say I needed 400 square feet per unit. So for this building, I would have 1,600 square foot of lot size. So I could build up to 4 units. What if I wanted to build 5 units? Well, I would need 2,000 square feet of lot size, and I don't have it. So now I would need a variance. I would need board approval. I'd have to go in front of a board and argue. So you want to, as much as possible, create land deals that do not need board approval or zoning approval. And if they do, you want to do that work. You doing that work adds value to your land. So this is another kind of slow and steady game. I'm going to buy land. I'm going to rezone it. I'm going to make sure it's at a size where I can rezone it, but somebody can build a nice building on it. And when I rezone it, that value add is going to increase the value of the land, and then I'm going to sell it. And doing that work for somebody else, now a developer can just come in and say, oh, that land's rezoned. Cool. I can start breaking ground tomorrow. You already did the soil test. You already did everything. Great. I'm going to pay you a premium for that speed. And that's your business. Is I use the technical knowledge. I prep the deals. They want to go build them for 18 months. God bless them. I'm going to take my money and go buy more land and do more things with my time. So it's an interesting business model there. There are different rules like size and setbacks. Like you have to, whenever you're building a plot of land, you have to conform to the neighborhood. So if I'm building a building on a plot of land, I can't have my property set forward like 10 feet and everybody else's is set back off of the initial land boundary 10 feet because I'm not going to conform to the neighborhood. So there's different rules there that we could, go a mile deep into, but I'll save you guys from that. Unless this is something you really want to do and you're kind of tapped into like the mentorship, I'm happy to work with anybody in the mentorship program on this type of stuff and setting up a custom game plan. But we can go a mile deep into that stuff. But just know that there are different rules that an architect would help you with, or once you get more knowledgeable, you'll understand how to think like the architect and just navigate this stuff. Holding periods. So holding periods, the average holding period is about that you want to buy into mentally. You want to buy into like a 2 to 5 year holding period, as much as 10 years, depending on how aggressive you are. Some people want to buy land for like $200 in some of the rougher parts of the city or municipality and then just wait it out, which is fine. That can be a really good strategy. And then your property taxes will be like $10 a year. You can certainly do that, and there's nothing wrong with it. But a good waiting kind of holding period, if you're kind of being more moderate, where you just want to get in, you'll pay a little bit more for a land lot, and you'll buy a little bit closer to the action, and you're going to target multifamily zoned, and you're going to do some of these things we're talking about in terms of value adds. 2 to 5 years. Get in, grab as much as you can, reparcel it, rezone it, do what you need to do to add value, and then get rid of it. And doing that strategy, you're going to make money. And how much money? And money compared to what? Because you guys know me, I love real estate, and I talk about all of this stuff because there's 101 ways to make money in real estate. And I wanted to kind of compare this to flipping because we're talking about flipping land lots. Once again, you guys can keep these land lots and develop them yourselves, but it's going to take you time and expertise and more capital. If you're starting off with little capital, I'm comparing this to like flipping houses. So let's say you wanted to flip a house or do this strategy I'm talking about, flip some land. If I'm going to flip a house, I'm going to grab this property. The average house flipping profit, and this is me putting up, maybe tying up $100,000 or $50,000, $60,000, and then maybe tying up more money in interest and materials and just different, fees and expenses. So I have these things. My average profit, and this is going back from 2017 to now, Q1, Q2 of 2022, around $65,000 average national profit for a flip, which is not bad because you can do one of these flips in 4 months or so, like 5 months, 6 months. You can do a flip. I'll put it more on 6 months because it'll take you 3 to 4 to build it, and then a couple months to get rid of it on average, 60 days. So 65,000, nothing to sneeze at. For a lot of us, if we did 2 or 3 flips a year, you're out of the 9 to 5 indefinitely, like right there, you're out. Now, on a land deal, the numbers are a little bit different. So let's say you bought a plot of land where I took the 50,000 that I would have to tie up on a flip deal, and I bought 10 parcels with that money. 50,000, I bought 10 parcels, I maintained them. And then all of those parcels, that would be 5,000 a parcel. All of those parcels 4x in value or 5x. Because this is what will happen. You'll buy them for 5 grand. You'll go out a couple years holding on to them. Now they're worth 25. So now you're 5x in your money on those deals across 10 parcels. Your money's going to go like crazy, basically, in terms of your profits. Your risk is very low because your carrying cost is very low. And the land, if you're in a major city, especially a sister city like the ones we like to target, where if I'm in Philly, people are getting priced out of New York, they're moving to Philly, Philly's getting bought up, completely developed, and eventually all the shells will get developed in most of the areas, and then people start going after the land. In fact, people will jump to the land deals often before they finish developing all of the shells because the ground up deals sell at a premium. So the after repair value on the ground up deals it will kind of leapfrog in the C class some of the existing shell deals in terms of maximum potential. And it's ground up deals can be easy to scale for some people because you can just get a crew. If you get a good one, you can kind of set up a plug and play. It's a slower model, but once you build up a pipeline, I mean, what's 18 months if you have a pipeline of 10 deals and one deal selling every 2 months because you've been doing it for so long? So that is only a hindrance to the new investor, not necessarily the experienced investor. So I want to show you guys this stuff side by side because the profit margin, pound for pound, in terms of return on investment, if you bought a house and flipped it, you're not even typically going to make 50% return on your investment. I mean, you can put on hard money, but there's expenses. They're going to eat half of your profit in hard money fees, or maybe like 30% of your profit in hard money fees. There's different costs to taking on leverage. Typically, if you buy a property, rehab it, flip it, you might make a 50%, 60% return on your money. That could be great. Maybe you would get 2x your money, but you're never going to do a flip deal and see 5x, 10x, 20x returns on your money. And this is what the land investor who sat me down at the auction explained to me and kind of opened my eyes on, which was pound for pound, profit for profit. Land is the most profitable thing to flip, to buy and hold. It's cheap, it's conservative. You can plan, you can plot. And if you scale up your own real estate operation over time, you can build on it yourself. But to trade in land as a long-term strategy is very profitable. And there's no tenants, there's less drama. I mean, you're dealing with the city and fines and things. You will get fined from time to time. But it's a very interesting conservative strategy. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. I'm going to open it up for Q&A. Once again, drop your questions in the comment section. I'm going to be pulling up questions as they come. I'll keep going for as long as we have questions. And it can be about, land. It can be about anything real estate related. So even if you're here and you have a question about wholesaling, how to get started with that, is buying and flipping good? Is buying and holding good? Is the economy good? Should I be investing in real estate at all? Any question is a good question. I'll hang out for as long as we have questions in the Q&A, and then we'll kind of keep flowing. So let's bring up some questions here. Sean has a question. How can I find properties that are that like the city does not have a listing? So for like the code violations, if the city does not have a listing open to the public, how can I find it? I would say most cities will have code violations open somehow. So you can typically get your hands on that information. If you can't, I mean, there are ways to drive for dollars to find that information. Most of the times people who are getting violations on their properties, they're just not taking care of them. So it depends on your purpose for trying to do this. If you're trying to get this information on code violations on properties to build a list of people to skip trace and target for wholesale deals, um, there's two ways to skin that cat. One is to do that type of research. Two is to like drive for dollars and just look for blight. Are windows busted out? Are window shades like always up? Is there a ton of mail in the door? Are there other tags on the door? Are there other issues with the property? So you can have violations, and that's a good one. Code violations. You also have municipal liens, water liens, different bills that are due against the property, which some of that can be public information. You'll also have eviction records on properties. So that's a good one to target. Has this landlord recently entered an eviction against somebody, and how is that going? Because that could be a sign of a burnout landlord, somebody who's looking to get rid of a property. So I just wouldn't stop there. I mean, cities will have information public, and then at times that information is no longer public, and you just need different strategies for list building and doing your skip tracing with that strategy. So hopefully that answers that question. Are there any other questions out there? Drop something in the chat. It looks like we just got one. Let me just take a sip here. It looks like the questions are coming in now, so definitely keep them coming. We'll keep flowing through them. When purchasing Philadelphia auction properties, how do you finance them given the right of redemption period? So that's a that's an advanced question. So let's talk about the right of redemption period, because not everybody even knows what that is. It's relatively advanced. So the right of redemption period, when you're dealing with the auctions, which we talked about here, is because somebody's losing their property. This is kind of like a foreclosure process by the city. So there's lien superiority, which I won't get fully into. You guys can Google lien superiority and kind of learn about that. But basically, if you owe the city money or you owe the municipality money, taxes, sometimes like the water utility is public. So if you don't pay it, it becomes a municipal lien against your property, and then it's foreclosable. These are senior liens, senior to your mortgage even. So if you don't pay, they can take your property, and they can wipe out all junior liens. This is why at times your lender will ask you, do you want to escrow your bills? Or they'll make you escrow your taxes, because if you don't, they know if you don't pay them and that property gets foreclosed on, they're going to be losing their mortgage position against that property. So they will step in. If you stop paying your mortgage today, part of your mortgage payment, a lot of you guys who have properties you live in, part of that mortgage is a tax escrow. And even if you stop paying the mortgage, the lender will still pay the taxes every month. They will still pay them because they don't want to lose their position. So because this is happening and it's a legal process, you have to be served notice properly by the city. And there are all different arguments against that. So people might come and say, I never got the paperwork and I want to redeem the property. This is this right of redemption. So typically, because this is a legal foreclosure, you will have a period of time to step in with the money that you was owed, the back taxes, the municipal liens, whatever it is, and you can step in and pay it plus a penalty and redeem the property. If somebody won this property at an auction, which would be us, an investor, we bid on it, we won it, you can pay us back the winning bid plus some type of a premium. Now, the right of redemption does not always carry over on land. In fact, it typically doesn't carry to land. It usually is fixed on existing properties, existing structures that somebody could live in. So you will have that situation there. How can you get around the right of redemption? There are certain companies that will basically partner with the lender. They'll partner with the title company, because the real issue with getting financing is you can't get title insurance. Financing requires title insurance. Title insurance is basically ensuring that the chain of command, that the property was transferred from one party to another correctly, and that there are no disputes. If there was a dispute, then the title insurance would have to pay, some party who was damaged, right? So you won't get a lot of people who will issue title insurance on auction properties because they know there can be rights of redemption in different disputes. So they just will stay out of it. There are third party companies that are legal companies that will partner with certain title insurance companies, and they will do the background screening to make sure that the person was served correctly, because often the municipality does not serve correctly. It's the government. Like, they're just not built out with their systems. They might have been slow one day, or somebody was new. They didn't send out the mail, whatever. So they will step in to do the checks to make sure it was served correctly. And then they will certify, we think there's a 98% chance this property was served correctly. So we're going to put our stamp on it. We're going to back it as well with additional insurance. And then you can get your title insurance, and then you can get financing like any other deal. So long-winded answer, but there's a lot of game there. You'll have to maybe watch this again, or if anybody runs into the redemption issue, definitely watch this. This will be like a big eye opener for you. Next question, and keep the questions coming. We'll keep rolling. We only have a few more questions, so if anybody has anything, get it in now, because as soon as we run out, we're gonna keep it moving until the next one. Does buying and holding multifamily properties in the Midwest, like in Cleveland, Ohio market, look profitable for 2023? I think buying, in areas like Cleveland is super profitable right now. Cleveland and Columbus, Ohio, they're like they're two cities listed in the top 10 cash flow cities in the country. So Cleveland is definitely a hot place to buy. I've seen 4 or 5 unit buildings for 100K or thereabout. So there's a lot of deals out in this Cleveland market. It's a great time to buy. Right now, it's a buyer's market pretty much everywhere. So you can negotiate hard. You can get a good deal at a reasonable price right now. We know that now that we're into 2023, recession talks are kind of getting down and dirty, I'll call it. And people are just admitting, yeah, we're in a recession. We've been in a recession. And the only way out of a recession is to reduce interest rates. This is what the Fed has done in every recession in US history. I don't think this one is going to be different. And as rates come back down, those properties that you already own, you could refinance lower. If you're buying them now at higher rates, you could just refinance into a lower rate, increase your cash flow. It's definitely worth it if you're a cash flow investor. And getting your hands on these properties, it's good. So I definitely think it's good, especially if you're buying in like Cleveland. You're probably playing that C-class investment game, which I love to play, where you're buying these properties, these multis, you're Section 8ing them, you're getting good cash flow out of them, and you're just going to hold them, for the long term and build that generational wealth. So it's always a good time to build generational wealth. Now is definitely a good time to stay tapped into the market. I wouldn't watch too much of the news. A lot of the news is really, negative news is clickbaity. So the more negative, the more people click, the more people watch, and you'll see that. But that stuff is very national in these micro markets, especially in the Northeast, and even out to like the Cleveland, Ohio markets. The real estate is really good. It's pretty stable. I could show you numbers on places like Cleveland, but the real estate is stable there. The pricing is not projected to fluctuate substantially. So it's not like you're going to buy in and values are going to get cut in half and there's this massive real estate crash. We're probably not going to see that. Like, I hate to break it to anybody who's expecting that or waiting on the sidelines for that, but we're probably not going to see it. We're more likely to just see prices be relatively flat in 2023, not up, not down. If anything, a little bit down, 5%, 10%. Then rates, when they start going back down at the end of 2023 into 2024, prices are going to start going back up again. And you're going to miss your window to buy. Your window to buy is this year. It's this year. So if you've been sitting on the sidelines, now's the time to get in. Now's the time to tap in. If you don't know what you're doing, tap into mentorship, get it figured out, do more research. And now's the time to really get ingrained in this game, because there's I'll show you guys this. JP Morgan, let me see, JP Morgan Heaven Realty. I'll show you guys this. Let me get us back over. JP Morgan started a fund. They started a fund. Um, Let me zoom this in a little bit. They started a fund and pumped in $1 billion to buy properties, single family residential, all out in the Midwest. And they're going to start buying Q1 of 2023. So now the clock has started. Big money. This is like November 22, but they were planning for it now. So big money is buying in $1 billion for rental properties. So big money's like they're pouring in right now. They know it. They know that right now is the time. And the news comes out. They're probably paying for some of the news to say, "Hey, tell them it's just horrible. It's not a good time to buy." They put $1 billion in, and they're dumping it in the market right now. They're going to buy up all these properties, and they're going to turn the Midwest into a renter nation. So some of these states will be what I call a renter nation, where 80, pretty much 60% or more of the people who live there rent. And there are areas in like California where 90+% of the people rent, or in the Bronx, New York, 88% of the people rent. Very few owners, mostly renters. These are rental nations. And there are renter nations all across the world, all across the globe, where people just can't afford housing anymore. So now is a time where you want to get in and get your piece of the pie, because the value of property is going to continue to increase long term, especially as big money. Like, I'm not saying they're coming and dropping $1 billion into apartment buildings or commercial real estate. They're talking about single family buy and hold real estate. These are deals that you could own, that I could own, right? That somebody could buy and live in. They're running up the pricing of that. So hopefully that answers that. What else? Let's see what else we got. I was in Baltimore over Thanksgiving, and I'm looking to buy my first property with 3 or 4 units using FHA as Airbnb and traveling nurse accommodations. But it's better to buy a lot first. I don't know. I like this. If you guys haven't heard about this traveling nurse game is serious. Like, there's a big sub market of traveling nurses, and they will go to multiple cities. They get contracts, and they need what I call midterm housing. So a lot of us think about short-term rentals, which I would classify Airbnb as. And then you have a long-term rental, Section 8, 1 year, 2 year lease. The midterm rental is like, hey, I need a 6-month lease. I need a 3 to 6 month lease. That's what these traveling nurses are doing, because they're doing 3 to 6 month contracts, but they're paying a premium far beyond like even a room rental or even co-living. They're paying a serious premium on these products. So I started looking at this stuff as I was learning more about it. And I'm talking about, you could get 2 times the rent and room rent, and just get a premium, just marketing your product to traveling nurses and people who are looking for this midterm rental product. So I do like the idea of getting this 3 or 4 unit and cranking it out on these midterm rentals, because your cash flow is going to be crazy. I mean, you could easily make, doing that strategy, $1,000 a month off of a multifamily property in a place like Baltimore. You got a bunch of big hospitals in Baltimore. So I do like that strategy. There are more parts to this question. I'll kind of tackle it a little bit more. Once I buy a property and rehab it, how long do I have to wait before I can reevaluate it and pull out the equity? This is more of a seasoning requirement. So seasoning is where you buy a property and you're dealing with a lender, and they want to make sure you owned it or stabilized it for a certain period of time before they will allow you to refinance and do what you want to do. So usually seasoning is only like 30 days. I've seen seasoning as long as a year in really bad markets, or when things get skittish. Speaking of that, like when we went into COVID, the COVID shutdowns, seasoning went from, I had one lender, they would give you 80% cash out refinance. So I could buy something for pennies on the dollar, invest 65% in rehabbing it with a hard money lender, then go to them. They're giving me 80 cents on the dollar. So I'm getting a 15% pop on, let's call it a $250,000 property, $250,000 property. So I'm getting 15% of that. I'm getting like $30K net cash out on every deal I build. I'm trying to build 5 to 10 a month. Like I'm trying to run these things. And they had no seasoning. They're just like, just get it done. I don't even care if it's tenanted. That was the environment in 2018, 2019. I don't even care if it's tenanted. Just get some tenants in it within 3 months. And they didn't call the check. Like that was their process. And then when the COVID hit, it was like, hey, we need the seasoning. We're back to 180 days seasoning. We're like, yo, you're crazy. You guys had 0 seasoning 3 days ago. So it's always changing. But you just have to ask the lender, that's the question. What's your seasoning requirement? But typically you don't have to wait long. And going back to that question, you can pull out equity like immediately, usually after 30 days. So you could buy it, rehab it for 30 days, do a cash out refinance, pull out some equity, put some tenants in it, cash flow it, and then take your money and go do it again immediately. You could do 2 deals at once. You could do 10 deals at once, as long as the lender's on board. And the more deals you do successfully, the more they're on board. JP Morgan, BlackRock, they're all buying up properties right now. China will jump in. They're going to throw in thousands of dollars, millions or billions of dollars. People from outside of the country, other countries, they're going to buy up U.S. real estate. But they're just telling us, don't buy it. It's not a good time. Wait it out. This, that, and third. Nobody cares about that. Big money is just buying in because they see everybody's buying. And if we don't get our piece, we're going to run out of time and it's going to be over. So you gotta get into this thing, while you can. How do I reach out for your mentorship? I'm much older than your regular client. You don't necessarily know that. You don't know what my regular client is. And, I always say in terms of age, there's never a good time or bad time to get into real estate. The only bad thing to do is to not get in and sit on the sidelines. So you're never too old or you're never too young. We have people in the mentorship program who are well into their 60s or even 70s. And we have people in the mentorship program who are 20 years old, almost 19 years old. So there's never you're never too young and you're never too old. Real estate has been here for a long time. It's not going anywhere, and it's made more millionaires than anything. So the only bad thing to do is sit on the sidelines. If you want to reach out for the mentorship, however you got here, if you got like an email, text, you can reach out there. You can tap in through the www.workwithgrimes.com/cash flow link, which is scrolling at the bottom of the screen. So you can tap into that free training. And there will be links there to book a call with me and my team and kind of, talk one-on-one about this mentorship program, how you can get started, what the best strategy is. Is it land? Is it FHA, house hacking? And there's so many ways to make money, which is why we focus on all of them, because the market changes. That's what people always ask me that. Brian, why do you focus on a few different strategies or know so much about so many strategies? Because the market changes. So I don't want to go in and say, oh yeah, I'm Mr. Airbnb. And then the market changes. Like New York, January 1st, 2023, just dropped a 30-page regulation pretty much banning, Airbnb and penalizing a lot of small hosts by creating what they call hotel taxes, which can eat into 10, 15% of the profit margin, which could be your entire profit margin. Or creating different fines and penalties, 30 pages of documents about making it harder for you to be a Airbnb host. And this happens all over the place. So, you don't want to just have that one strategy. If that's your only strategy, now you're out of the business. But if you can pivot, if now's a good time to buy and hold, I want to buy and hold. If it's a good time to buy and flip, I want to flip a couple. It's a good time to wholesale, I'm wholesale. Land deals, creative financing, subject to lease purchase options. Let's bring it. Or you'll run into different scenarios where different types of strategies or different sellers want different types of offers. And the only way to make sense out of it is with certain strategies. So you need to learn. You don't want to be a jack of all trades in that sense. I mean, the BRRRR strategy, if you can master just that, you'll become a millionaire. You'll become a millionaire just with that, just the BRRRR strategy. But you do want to be able to pivot because you want to be reactive to the market, because the market's always going to change no matter who you are or what you're doing. That's the lesson. You could be rolling this year and then the market changes and now you're out. So you always want to have some flexibility or at least access to different strategies. And that's why the 100 Keys Masterclass, we cover everything. So you have access to all these different strategies. I want you to master one because one will make you a millionaire, and then shift your access as necessary to different strategies to respond to the market. But you don't know that you're older than my oldest client, and my youngest client is really, really young, and like really going after it. Like this guy impresses me, and I'm not like a jealous person. Like I come in and give you guys this information to help you guys because I want you guys to win. But I look at like the youth that my youngest client has, and it's such a gift at the same time. Youth comes with distractions though. So being older, you have more focus and less distraction. Being younger, he has so many distractions, things that can shake him off the path. But the youth, the energy to be able to put in a 20-hour like day drive, drive for dollars, do everything, go out of town, and then take a nap, wake up, do it again, and not even have a consequence from an energy standpoint from that is it's phenomenal. So it's definitely something to envy as you get older. What are the typical rehab costs for a 4-unit building, light, medium, and full gut? It really depends. It depends on a lot of things, the square footage, the city, because there can be price premiums in places like New York versus Philly versus Delaware versus Baltimore. So it does depend on the type of property, what you're building, the square footage, and there's no easy way to do it. Like if you're doing a full gut versus a light and medium, that can change. Light and medium is kind of broad because you can buy a property and think it's going to be a light rehab and then it ends up as a full gut. So you really don't know until you get into a deal. How I like to build my calculations is on a deal by deal basis. I go in, I will look at pictures and have big picture numbers, but I want to go in, do a visual inspection, and then go line by line. And maybe I'll do that for you guys at some point on one of these, but go line by line and really flesh out what a good budget is going to be for this deal, what it's going to cost. And that will determine, what my budget is, but it changes. I will say for your typical 2,000 square foot, 3-story row home, that you're going to turn into a duplex full gut, it's probably a couple $100,000 to full gut it. So if you're targeting properties that you can buy in the 150,000 range, pour in a couple $100K, and the ARV is for 550,000, you're going to have a nice profit spread, right? You're in at 350, it's worth 500. That's a good profit spread where you can flip it and make some money. Here we go. Monica tapped in. As an investor dealing in a co-living space, could I split some of the ROI and tax percentage of that as a nonprofit if I were to provide housing for veterans? Let me read that again. As an investor dealing in a co-living space, could I split some of the return on investment and tax, a percentage of that as a nonprofit? I mean, if you are set up as a nonprofit, you could do the whole deal in a nonprofit like entity, and then have those tax breaks on the entire deal. So there's certainly nothing wrong with that. I don't know that you would have to provide housing to veterans or anything. So I think it would be less about who you're providing the housing to versus the structure of your LLC or your entity. And if it has that, I believe it's a 501c status. So if you have that 501c status and you're investing in real estate through that, you're going to have the tax breaks because the entity itself is tax advantaged. How do you feel about squatting to attain property? Like, you mean squatting, like you squatting in a property to? I don't think that that's a reasonable strategy. I mean, most people are going to get squatters out of properties. So it's not I don't think it's a reasonable strategy ever. It's certainly not long term because the laws, even if you're doing it in like LA, I wanted to say like the law's not on your side, but maybe it is in somewhere like California. Like you can kind of do it and get away with it to a degree. But in most places, it's just a bad strategy. It also can be bad energy. Like I do understand, sometimes people are just on hard times and they don't have another option, but it can be a bad energy. Like people are wild, man. So like you can go squat on a property. Some people will come to your front door to see you. It's not. I don't think it's a great energy to put out just squatting. Now, going after properties that have squatters in them, I think is a good. It can be a good strategy if you come up with fair solutions. Like hey, like cash for keys. Like, hey, you squatted in this property, and this is something that squatters do. So I will say, is it a strategy to obtain a property? No, you're not going to get a property at just squatting in it. But I do know some people kind of have like a hustle of they will squat in a property that they think is going to be sold or know is about to be sold, and then when that property is kind of gets sold and a new buyer comes in, they'll get cash for keys out of that deal, and then they'll find another one to kind of squat in, and that could be a little hustle where you're just going around because it does make sense to pay a squatter to leave if you have a profitable deal like the one I just described, 2,000 square foot duplex with a nice profit margin, 150K. There's nothing wrong with breaking off $3,000 to a squatter. Hey, here's $3,000, get out. Sign this piece of paper, get out. And now you go make 147,000. That's the cost of doing business. Write it off on taxes. There's nothing wrong with that. So that's what I'll say about squatting. Like going after properties with squatters can be very profitable because a lot of people don't know how to navigate it. So that can be a good strategy. If I want to use a let's call it like a SUSU as a down payment, you'll have to maybe ask that again. I'm not sure what that is. Will a bank be insensitive about where I get the money from? Banks typically do want to know where you get money from for a down payment. So if you're like getting it from family or things, like the bank is pretty much going to ask for your tax returns. They want to see affordability. They don't necessarily want to see your ability to just acquire a property. They want to see your ability to maintain a payment over a long duration of time, especially if you're getting a 30-year mortgage. They want to see that you're responsible and that you have cash reserves to make payments against that debt. They don't want, debts going bad. They have enough non-paying, mortgages on the books. So they're more interested in, people who can maintain long term. Any other questions out there? We got just a comment from one of our students. He's 48 and look, he's cranking. He's ready to build. We were just talking earlier today or texting back and forth earlier today. And he's ready to build this thing out and build up for his family. So there's definitely a lot of that going on. It's a Caribbean way or Spanish way of saving money. I know what you're talking about. I have no idea how a bank would view that. I have no idea how a bank would view that, to be honest. I have no idea, but I know they will they're going to want to see tax returns. They want to see, pay stubs, employment income, things like that to qualify you for a deal. Any other questions out there? Anything at all? If not, we will, definitely wrap things up. I appreciate you guys tapping in. Hopefully you learned a ton about land deals. We talked about, a lot of different stuff in the Q&A. So there's definitely value there. If you guys want to tap into the mentorship program, just reach out. However you got here, you can leave a comment here. You guys can email me. You can tap into the free training. You can find me on Instagram, Brian Grimes _247CFU for the 24/7 Cash Flow University. LinkedIn, Brian Grimes Real Estate. Google Brian Grimes Explains. You'll find some of my videos. You can find me at Brian Loves Cash Flow on YouTube. Tap into the channel. Everything's backlinked, so you guys can definitely get a hold of me. And on TikTok at Grimes Estate on TikTok. And we're dropping a lot of content there. We'll answer one more question and then we'll sign this thing off. What are your thoughts on placing a memorandum on a property to secure your equitable interest in a deal and ensure that the seller is only dealing with you exclusively as the buyer? Nothing wrong with that. Boxing out the market. there's nothing wrong with that. So definitely when you're dealing with a seller, you want to get contracts in place that, kind of lock in your position on a deal. So that's kind of that, guys. I hope you appreciated this. If you want to get a hold of me, you know how to get a hold of me. Stay tapped into the YouTube channel. Subscribe to this channel. Subscribing will save you tens of thousands of dollars throughout your real estate journey, and it doesn't cost you anything. So what a better reason to stay tapped in, because I'm going to keep dropping more fire for you guys, especially as we head into 2023. There's so much to talk about. So appreciate you guys. Thanks for tapping in, and I'll see you guys on the next one.